Today, we explore two heartbreaking cases where the ultimate punishment was carried out, but on the wrong people. 1. George Stinney Jr., a 14-year-old African-American boy from Alcolu, South Carolina, who was wrongfully convicted and executed in 1944. His case remains one of the most harrowing examples of a miscarriage of justice in U.S. history. In March 1944, two young white girls, Betty June Binnicker, 11, and Mary Emma Timms, 7, were found dead in a ditch after being reported missing. They had been brutally beaten, and the local community was desperate for answers. George Stinney Jr. and his family lived nearby, and George was quickly arrested. At the time, the racial climate in the South was highly charged, and the fact that Stinney was black made him an easy target. According to reports, Stinney was interrogated by law enforcement without any legal representation, his parents, or an attorney present. After hours of questioning, it was alleged that George confessed to the murders, although no written confession was ever produced, and it lasted just a few hours. The defense did not call any witnesses on George's behalf, and the jury, composed entirely of white men, deliberated for only 10 minutes before finding him guilty. Despite his young age, George was sentenced to death by electric chair. His lawyer made no appeal. Just 83 days after his arrest, on June 16, 1944, George Stinney Jr. was executed. At 14, he was the youngest person to be executed in the United States in the 20th century. Reports from the time describe how, due to his small frame, the electric chair's straps barely fit him, and his face was obscured by the oversized mask. Posthumous justice. For decades, many believed George Stinney Jr. was wrongfully convicted. His case was re-examined in 2014, 70 years after his execution, due to the lack of physical evidence and the rushed nature of his trial. A South Carolina judge overturned the conviction, acknowledging that Stinney had not received a fair trial and was likely coerced into confessing. In a moment of overdue justice, George Stinney Jr.'s name was finally cleared. His story serves as a stark reminder of the racial injustices that have shaped the U.S. legal system and the tragic consequences of wrongful convictions. 2. Marcellus Williams was convicted of the 1998 murder of Felicia Gale, a former St. Louis Post-Dispatch reporter, and has spent over 2 decades on death row. His case has been controversial due to questions surrounding the evidence used to convict him. No DNA evidence links him to the crime, and recent forensic tests showed that male DNA found on the murder weapon did not match Williams. Additionally, the case against him was primarily built on testimony from 2 incentivized witnesses, both of whom had questionable credibility due to their criminal backgrounds and conflicting statements. Despite this, courts have repeatedly denied Williams' efforts to overturn his conviction. The Missouri Attorney General's office has maintained that the evidence presented at trial, such as personal items belonging to the victim found in Williams' possession and witness testimony about him selling the victim's laptop, is sufficient to uphold the conviction. Williams' defense team, along with the Innocence Project, continues to argue that the case is tainted by unreliable witness testimony and racial bias, as his jury was predominantly white. Williams' execution was originally scheduled for September 2024, but his legal team continues to fight for a stay, citing both new DNA evidence and concerns about the fairness of the trial. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe